Life often presents itself as a series of challenges, a ceaseless tide of struggles, resistances, and obstacles. And yet, in these very moments of difficulty lies a fundamental question that each of us must answer: what shall we do with our suffering? This question is not rhetorical, it holds the key to how we shape ourselves and whether we ascend or stagnate. Nietzsche, in his philosophy, offers us a way not merely to endure suffering, but to transform it into power. Not power over others, but a power within a force that enables us to grow, create, and overcome. Today I want to speak to you about one of Nietzsche's most profound concepts, the idea of the eternal return, and how it can be used as a transformative tool to turn struggles into strength. Imagine for a moment that everything in your life, the triumphs, the failures, the heartbreaks, the moments of joy and despair, were destined to repeat themselves endlessly, in an infinite loop of time. Every decision you've made, every regret you carry, every victory and defeat, relived not once, but an infinite number of times. This is Nietzsche's thought experiment of the eternal return. It is not simply a metaphysical proposition, it is a psychological test of the highest order. Faced with this possibility, we must ask, could you embrace your life as it is forever? Could you affirm all of it, including the suffering? Or would you recoil in horror at the thought of reliving your struggles endlessly? The eternal return forces us to confront the reality of our struggles in a way that no other idea does. It asks us to see our pain not as something to escape, but as something to integrate, something to transform. For Nietzsche, the aim is not to eliminate suffering, it is to use it. And herein lies the genius of his philosophy. Suffering, when confronted and overcome, becomes the very source of our strength. Resistance sharpens us, adversity refines us, and struggle transforms us into something greater than we were before. The question is not whether we will face challenges, but what we will do with them.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let's begin with the most fundamental truth. Life will challenge you. It will place obstacles in your path that seem insurmountable. It will test your patience, your will, your courage, and your resolve. But here is where Nietzsche's insight becomes crucial. The obstacle is not the enemy. The obstacle is the ally. It is the very thing that forces us to grow. Without resistance, there is no strength. Without struggle, there is no transformation. Just as a muscle must be torn and strained to grow stronger, so too must we face resistance to develop our inner power. But how does one turn struggle into power? The first step is to reframe your relationship with suffering. Most of us instinctively avoid pain. We see it as something to be minimized, something to escape. But what if we saw pain as a teacher, as a signal that we are on the edge of growth? When you feel discomfort, when you face resistance, it is a sign that you are encountering a boundary, a limit of your current self. And that limit is precisely where transformation happens. Growth begins where comfort ends. Think about the moments in your life when you have grown the most. Were they times of ease and leisure? Or were they times when you were pushed to your limits, when you faced challenges that seemed too great to bear? It is in these moments of struggle that we are forced to dig deep, to find resources within ourselves that we did not know existed. Struggle is the crucible in which strength is forged. But this transformation is not automatic. Struggle alone does not make us stronger. It is how we respond to struggle that determines whether we grow or whether we break. Here, Nietzsche's concept of the will to power becomes essential. The will to power is not about domination or control, it is about the drive to overcome, to ascend, to become more than we are. When we face a challenge, we have a choice: we can retreat or we can advance. To advance is to engage the will to power, to use the resistance as fuel for growth. Ask yourself this when you face a challenge: do you see it as a threat or do you see it as an opportunity? This is not a trivial question. It is the difference between a life of stagnation and a life of continual growth. If you see struggle as a threat, you will avoid it. You will shrink from the discomfort, and in doing so, you will limit your potential. But if you see struggle as an opportunity to rise, to strengthen yourself, then every challenge becomes a gift. Every resistance becomes a chance to expand your power. But let us go deeper still. Nietzsche's eternal return is not just about accepting struggle, it is about loving it. Amor fati, the love of fate, is the idea that we must embrace everything in our lives, including the pain, as necessary and good. To love your fate is to see every moment, no matter how difficult, as an integral part of your becoming. It is to say yes to life in its entirety. This is not an easy task. It requires a radical shift in perspective. But it is the only way to truly transform struggle into strength. Think about your greatest struggles. What if you could look at them not with regret, but with gratitude? What if you could see them as the very things that made you who you are? This is the challenge of the eternal return. It is not simply to endure your struggles, but to affirm them, to embrace them, to love them. For in doing so, you reclaim your power. You take ownership of your life in all its complexity. And in that ownership, you find freedom. But this freedom comes with responsibility. If we accept the eternal return, we must also accept that we are the creators of our lives. Every choice we make, every action we take, echoes through eternity. There is no escape, no second chance. This thought can be terrifying, but it can also be liberating. It forces us to confront the reality of our choices and to take them seriously. If you knew that every decision you made would be repeated forever, how would you live? Would you choose differently? Would you act more boldly, love more deeply, strive more fiercely? The eternal return is not a passive idea. It demands action. It demands that we take control of our lives and transform our struggles into power. And this transformation is not a one-time event. It is a continual process, a cycle of resistance and overcoming, growth and renewal. Nietzsche called this process self-overcoming, the idea that we must continually transcend our previous selves, that we must always strive to become more than we were. But self-overcoming is not easy. It requires us to face our fears, our doubts, our weaknesses. It requires us to confront the parts of ourselves that we would rather ignore. And it requires us to embrace the struggle, to see it not as a burden, but as a gift. This is the paradox of Nietzsche's philosophy. The very thing we seek to avoid suffering is the thing that makes us strong. The very thing we fear struggle is the thing that propels us forward. So I ask you, are you willing to embrace your struggles? Are you willing to see them not as obstacles, but as opportunities? Are you willing to affirm your life in its entirety and to use every moment, no matter how difficult, as a chance to grow? This is the challenge of the eternal return. It is not a philosophy for the faint of heart. It is a call to courage, to resilience, to power. But the rewards are immense. When we transform our struggles into power, we become unshakable. We become creators of our own destiny. We become, in Nietzsche's words, a yes-sayer, someone who embraces life in all its complexity with a resounding yes. And in that affirmation, we find the greatest freedom, the greatest strength, the greatest joy. But this is only the beginning. There is much more to explore, much more to uncover about how the eternal return can transform our lives. Let us continue this journey together, and I will show you how to take Nietzsche's insights even further, to not only face your struggles, but to use them to create a life of unparalleled power and meaning. If we are to truly embody Nietzsche's philosophy and transform our struggles into power, we must go beyond merely reframing suffering. It is not enough to think differently about resistance, we must live differently. We must integrate the eternal return as a guiding principle in our choices, our actions, and our growth. This is where the real work begins, and it is not for the faint of heart. To live in alignment with the eternal return is to take full responsibility for your existence, not in part, but in whole. It requires nothing less than a radical transformation of how we approach every moment of our lives. Imagine again that your life is destined to repeat itself endlessly. Every mistake you make, every failure, every regret will come back to you not once but for eternity. This can feel suffocating, even unbearable. But this thought experiment is not meant to paralyze you, it is meant to wake you up. It demands that you live as if every action matters infinitely, because in a sense it does. The eternal return strips away all illusions of escape or postponement. There is no someday when you'll finally get it right. There is only now. And the question is, are you living in a way that you could affirm forever? This is not a question of perfection. Nietzsche never demanded that we live without flaw or failure. On the contrary, he understood that failure is inevitable, even necessary for growth. But he did demand that we live with intention, that we take our struggles, our imperfections, and our pain and turn them into something greater. He demanded that we create meaning, not by avoiding difficulty, but by confronting it head-on and using it as a catalyst for transformation. How do we do this? How do we take the raw materials of our lives, the suffering, the resistance, the chaos, and shape them into power? The answer lies in the concept of self-overcoming. Self-overcoming is not about rejecting who we are, nor is it about perfection. It is about recognizing that we are always in a state of becoming. That who we are today is not who we must always be. That we can and must strive to become more than we were yesterday. Self-overcoming begins with a deep honesty, a willingness to see yourself as you are, without excuses or denial. It requires you to confront your weaknesses, your fears, your failures, not to judge or condemn yourself, but to understand where you stand. Where are the limits of your current self? What resistances do you face, both internal and external? These are not easy questions to answer, but they are essential. For it is only by understanding where we are weak that we can begin to strengthen ourselves. But self-overcoming is not just about identifying weaknesses. It is about action. It is about taking the steps to confront those weaknesses, to push against the resistances, and to grow stronger in the process. This is where the will to power comes into play. The will to power is not a passive force. It is an active, dynamic drive to expand, to ascend, to overcome. When we engage the will to power, we do not shrink from challenges, we seek them out. We do not avoid resistance, we embrace it. For it is in resistance that we find the opportunity to grow. Think about your life right now. What are the resistances that you face? Perhaps it is fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown. Perhaps it is doubt in your abilities, doubt in your worth, doubt in your future. Or perhaps it is laziness, complacency, a tendency to settle for less than you are capable of. Whatever your resistances are, they hold the key to your growth. They are the boundaries of your current self, and they are the very things you must confront and overcome if you are to ascend to a higher level of being. But confronting resistance is not easy. It requires courage, discipline, and persistence. It requires a willingness to fail, to stumble, to endure discomfort. And it requires a mindset that sees struggle not as a setback, but as an opportunity. This is where the eternal return becomes so powerful. When you live as if every moment matters infinitely, you have no choice but to confront your resistances. There is no room for avoidance, no time for excuses. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to affirm your life, to grow your power, to become more. Let me ask you something. What would it take for you to live in a way that you could affirm forever? What changes would you need to make in your life? What resistances would you need to confront? These are not abstract questions. They are the most practical, urgent questions we can ask, for they force us to take ownership of our lives, to stop blaming circumstances or other people, and to take full responsibility for who we are and who we are becoming. But taking responsibility does not mean going it alone. Nietzsche's philosophy is often misunderstood as promoting isolation or individualism at the expense of community. But this is a shallow reading of his ideas. While Nietzsche did emphasize the importance of individuality, he also understood the value of relationships. The people in our lives are not just companions, they are mirrors, teachers, and sometimes adversaries. They challenge us, inspire us, and force us to confront parts of ourselves that we might otherwise ignore. Think about the people in your life. Who challenges you the most? Who pushes you to grow, to confront your weaknesses, to strive for more? These people are not always easy to be around. They may provoke you, frustrate you, even anger you. But they are also invaluable, for they force you to engage in the very process of self-overcoming that Nietzsche saw as the essence of life. They are, in a sense, your resistances made flesh. But relationships, like struggles, are only as transformative as we allow them to be. It is not enough to merely endure difficult relationships or challenging people. We must engage with them actively, using them as opportunities to grow. This requires humility, the humility to admit when we are wrong, when we are weak, when we need to change. But it also requires strength to stand firm in our values, to hold others accountable, to demand the best from ourselves and from those around us. But let us go further still. Nietzsche's philosophy is not just about individual growth, it is about creating something greater than oneself. The will to power is not satisfied with mere self-improvement. It demands that we create, that we contribute, that we leave something behind that is greater than we are. This is why Nietzsche spoke so often of the Übermensch, the overman, the one who transcends the limitations of the human condition and creates new values, new possibilities, new worlds. What does it mean to create? It does not necessarily mean writing a book or building a monument, though it can. To create is to bring something into existence that did not exist before. It is to take the raw materials of life, your experiences, your struggles, your insights, and shape them into something meaningful. This could be a work of art, a business, a relationship, a family, a community. It could be as simple as a kind word, a helping hand, a moment of courage. To create is to say yes to life. It is to affirm your existence, not just in words, but in action. But creation is not easy. It requires effort, discipline, and sacrifice. It requires us to face our fears, to risk failure, to endure criticism. And it requires us to confront the ultimate resistance ourselves. For the greatest struggle we will ever face is not with the world, but with our own limitations, our own doubts, our own fears. To create is to engage in a continual process of self-overcoming, to push against the boundaries of who we are, and to strive for something greater. And so I ask you again, what will you create with your life? What will you leave behind that is greater than yourself? These are not abstract questions. They are the most pressing, urgent questions we can ask. For they force us to confront the reality of our existence and to take full responsibility for what we do with the time we have. We have explored the nature of struggle, the role of resistance, and the transformative power of Nietzsche's eternal return. But there remains one final, inescapable truth, that we must face life as finite. Our time here is limited. No matter what we create, no matter how much power we cultivate, no matter how far we ascend, the day will come when all of it, our triumphs, our growth, our creations, will come to an end. Nietzsche understood this deeply, and yet he did not shy away from it. In fact, he embraced it. For him, the finitude of life was not something to lament, but something to affirm. It is precisely because life is finite that it is meaningful. And it is through the lens of the eternal return that we can confront this truth and transform it into a source of immense power. Imagine once again the eternal return, an infinite cycle of repetition, where every moment of your life is relived endlessly. This thought, though hypothetical, forces us to live as if every moment matters infinitely. But there is another side to this idea, one that Nietzsche hinted at but left for us to uncover. While the eternal return emphasizes the infinite repetition of life, it also paradoxically reminds us of its unique, fleeting nature. Each moment, though it may return, is also singular. Each choice, though it may echo forever, is also bound to the here and now. This tension between the infinite and the finite is where life's deepest meaning lies. So I ask you, are you living in a way that honors the uniqueness of your existence? Are you making choices that reflect the immense weight of your finite time? These are not abstract questions. They cut to the very core of what it means to live with power, with intention, with authenticity. To live in alignment with the eternal return is to live as if every moment is both eternal and final. It is to see your struggles not only as opportunities for growth, but as irreplaceable experiences that shape the essence of who you are. Let us return to the concept of struggle. Struggle, as we have seen, is not an obstacle to life, but its very foundation. Without resistance, there is no power. Without suffering, there is no transformation. But struggle alone is not enough. To truly transform struggle into strength, we must go beyond enduring it. We must give it meaning. And this is where Nietzsche's philosophy becomes truly profound. The meaning of your struggles is not something you find, it is something you find it. Think about that for a moment. The meaning of your suffering is not handed to you by the universe, by a god, or by fate. It is something you must actively construct. This is both a terrifying and liberating realization. It means that there is no inherent purpose to your pain, but it also means that you have the power to give it purpose. You are not a victim of your circumstances, you are the creator of your destiny. Even in the face of the greatest struggles, you retain this power, the power to create meaning, to transform resistance into growth, to turn suffering into strength. But how do we create meaning? How do we take the raw, often brutal reality of our struggles and shape them into something purposeful? The answer lies in action. Meaning is not found in passive reflection or idle thought. It is found in what you do, how you respond to the challenges life throws at you, how you shape your world, how you engage with the people and forces around you. Meaning is a verb. It is something you build brick by brick through your choices and actions. Let us consider the implications of this. If the meaning of your life is something you create, then every moment is an opportunity to shape that meaning. Every struggle, every resistance, every failure is raw material for your creation. This does not mean that suffering is good in itself. Nietzsche never glorified pain for its own sake, but he understood that pain, when faced with courage and creativity, can be transformed into something profound. It can become the foundation of your power, the source of your growth, the fuel for your becoming. But to create meaning from suffering requires a specific mindset, one that Nietzsche called amor fati, or the love of fate. To love your fate is to embrace everything in your life, including the pain, as necessary and good. It is not resignation. It is not passive acceptance. It is an active affirmation of your life in its entirety. It is to look at your struggles and say, this too is part of my story. This too is part of my becoming. Amor fati is not easy. It requires immense courage and strength. But it is the key to transforming suffering into power. Let me ask you something. If you could go back and change the most painful moments of your life, would you? On the surface, the answer might seem obvious. Who wouldn't want to erase their suffering? But think carefully. If you remove those struggles, who would you be today? What lessons would you have missed? What strength would you lack? The truth is, our struggles shape us in ways that comfort never could. They force us to grow, to adapt, to overcome. And in doing so, they make us who we are. To love your fate is to recognize this truth and to embrace it fully. But Nietzsche's philosophy goes even further. It is not enough to accept your struggles, to endure them, or even to love them. You must go beyond them. You must overcome them. This is the essence of the will to power, not to be content with what is, but to strive for what could be, to take the raw materials of your life, the pain, the resistance, the chaos, and use them to create something greater. This is what Nietzsche meant by self-overcoming. It is the continual process of transcending your limitations, of pushing beyond your current self, of becoming more. Self-overcoming is not a one-time event. It is a way of life. It is a cycle of struggle, growth, and renewal, and it is never complete. For each time we overcome, we encounter new resistances, new challenges, new opportunities for growth. This is why Nietzsche spoke of the eternal return as a joyful idea. It is not a burden, but a celebration of life's infinite potential for creation and transformation. To embrace the eternal return is to embrace the endless cycle of becoming, to see each struggle as an opportunity to grow, and to find joy in the process itself. But joy in Nietzsche's philosophy is not the shallow happiness of comfort or pleasure. It is the deep, abiding joy that comes from the feeling of power, of overcoming, of creation. It is the joy of saying yes to life in all its complexity. It is the joy of becoming who you are. And so we come to the final question: what will you do with your struggles? Will you see them as burdens to bear or as opportunities to grow? Will you use them to create meaning, to build strength, to ascend to a higher level of being? Or will you let them defeat you, diminish you, define you? The choice is yours. But remember this: every moment of your life, every struggle you face, is part of the eternal return. It is part of the infinite cycle of becoming. And it is up to you to decide how you will live within that cycle. Nietzsche's philosophy is not easy. It demands courage, discipline, and a radical rethinking of how we approach life. But it also offers immense rewards: the freedom to create your own meaning, the strength to overcome any resistance, and the joy of living with power and intention. If you can embrace your struggles, if you can love your fate, if you can live as if every moment matters infinitely, then you will have transformed not only your suffering but your entire existence. And in the end, that is what the eternal return is all about. It is not a theory to be debated or a concept to be understood. It is a way of life. A way of saying yes to the endless cycle of struggle and overcoming, growth and renewal. A way of finding meaning, power, and joy in every moment. A way of becoming who you are. So I leave you with this: what will you create with your life? How will you transform your struggles into power? How will you live in a way that you could affirm forever? The answers are not mine to give. They are yours to create. And in creating them, you will have done the most Nietzschean thing of all: you will have said yes to life.